Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. Today, we are joined by fantastic musicians and composers Katie Tunstall and Ilan Eshkeri to talk all about their latest film project, Chasing Wonders. And I wanted to start by talking about the genesis of your collaboration and particularly the sound that you found for this project, because Ilan, you've mentioned how one of the things for you that's important when you step into projects is to be able to create something that comes from a real place of intimacy, but also has a lot of reverence within contemporary spaces musically. And Katie, obviously, a lot of your music comes from a very intimate and contemporary space as well. And so I was interested, with that in mind for both of you, how that really fed into the collaboration and your journey of finding what the sound for this film was going to be.
That makes it sound really intelligent. I think we more just sort of hung out and made some
Yeah,
stuff up.
our journey definitely started in a studio kitchen.
Yeah.
But Elan and I have been friends for a while, and we were good friends before even this project. So it was extremely exciting for me when Elan invited me in on it and told me about the project, and it was an immediate yes, because Elan's such a fantastically experienced composer, and I was an absolute baby to it. So it was a great learning curve for me, but also an opportunity as a songwriter to really bring some fully crafted songwriting to a movie, which often a movie can't really handle full written brand new songs. It's usually using kind of older, well-known songs. So that was a wonderful opportunity. But I think something that Elan and I will talk for both of us, Elan, that we both just have a great reverence, respect, and love for music historically. We both really connect to older forms of music, older structures of music, lots of different genres of music. And so whilst trying to be contemporary, it's also brilliant to use kind of those just very traditional old songwriting and musical ingredients in what we were doing.
Yeah.
And with that idea that you both work across multiple genres of music, particularly within film composition, what was that process of starting to look at the footage, working with the director of this film, and really figuring out that musical aesthetic, that sound, that tone, that atmosphere in a way that there's a real linearity to the sound throughout the film, and yet each individual piece has its very own distinct voice and tells its own story in that moment as well?
I think we were lucky that the filmmakers just kind of let us get on with it, which is not, often not the case when you're making a film. But they really trusted us to just come up with what we wanted to do. And in terms of the instrumentation, I think we were really inspired by by what was in the film. The film takes place in very much in nature, and so we wanted to find earthy, organic sounding instruments that resembled the world that they were existing in.
And what was the actual stage in the development and production of this film that you came on board? Because obviously, very frequently, music composition starts in the post-production once production's finished, but there are times where you get the opportunity to come in and be involved earlier in the process as well. And so what did that look like for this particular project for you both?
It was a pretty fully formed piece and it's gone through changes, as films always will, but it was a fairly strong story by the time that we got it. And as Elan said, it was a very organic process where the film is so beautiful. I mean, you could just take screen grabs and make a book of postcards. It really is a gorgeous looking film. And so that was one of the things that was lovely about it, that even though we were coming in at a stage where it was quite well formed, there had obviously been a sensibility to leave plenty of space for the music to be an important voice in the movie. And for me, it really was this sort of sound of the landscape and sound of the journey of this kid and his family. And so it felt very respectful of the potential for the music to come, that we were given a really just stunning amount of freedom. We really just went to town and enjoyed ourselves, and it was a fantastic kind of coming together of creative sensibilities, because we really almost, I don't think we hit any major bumps in the road. We really just worked so well together. It was great.
And you're bringing up the fact that obviously, as you're going through this process, the film continues to change and be finessed in editing. Some of the pacing and the rhythm of a scene might adjust. And so, do you find for both of you that whenever you're approaching a project like this, that there's a real necessity to create something with a really strong, concrete idea of what it is, but also with that opportunity for fluidity so that you can make those adjustments if you need to as they continue finessing it?
I think all creative processes, you have to be, it's never too good to hang on to something if it's not quite working, and especially if you're collaborating with people. I think when a filmmaker says, this music isn't working here, it's not a criticism of you, it's a criticism, or even of the music you wrote, it's a criticism of how the music interacts with the film. And so I think you've just got to be prepared to let things go. But this film as well, the music was so much about the sort of inner emotional journey of the characters, as opposed to if you're writing a music for an animation where you really need, I mean, it is about the inner emotional journey, but you also have to hit every single beat. And so when that edit changes, it's a total nightmare. But with something like this, there's a little bit more leeway in terms of how the music.
Yeah, I think what this, even the songs themselves, like the instrumental bed that the songs sit on, and then Ilan's beautiful arrangements that kind of have stretched out. There's just this real kind of plasticity to all of that, where it really didn't feel that you were taking anything away by helping mold around what you're watching as things changed. It was quite fluid, and I think that the songs had been written in reaction to watching the movie, and because of that, there was just a very natural flow to these things, and it was not painful. I can imagine it being extremely painful if you write what you think is just perfect for something, and then it doesn't work, and it can really kind of fracture it into pieces. And thankfully, what we'd written did have this sort of stylistic palette to it, so that it was easier to kind of expand and contract as we needed to.
Yeah. And when you're writing for a film like this, with to the point that you're both making about how it really is about the internal emotion and that being where the music stems from and what we're feeling as an audience in watching it, do you find that there's a necessity as an artist to step into a real place of empathy, because you're essentially stepping into the psyche of the characters in order to really encapsulate that inner emotion?
I think good question, but I think for me, definitely yes.
I mean, for me, that's the job. It's all, you have to work to try your best to support what the filmmaker is trying to make and what the filmmaker is trying to say. Your only job is to support what you're watching and to bring out what it is the filmmaker and director have asked you to bring out. That's your job, and it's really lovely working in that way, because for me, I'm kind of always in charge. It's actually quite nice to not be in charge when I'm doing films.
But I think you do have to try and take on the emotion in order to express it. You have to internalize it, which is why I stopped. I don't like doing horror movies. It's true.
Is that because horror movies are more about creating?
You have to internalize what it's like.
You have to internalize it. I did one of the Hannibal Lecter movies, a prequel that it wasn't as well received as some of the others, but living in that sort of cannibalistic world for months on end, trying to imagine the emotions involved with that. After I did that, I just thought I'm not going to do more of these.
Yeah, not the most fun.
No.
And when it came to working on a lot of the individual tracks, there's moments in the film where there's kind of a very seamless way that the music starts to appear. And even if you look at the wavelengths of the tracks, a lot of them start very quietly and then gradually build. So you're stepping in very gently for the audience. And then there's moments where it comes in with like a slightly more established sound right at the beginning, or is coming in with lyrics right at the beginning. And so you really want the audience to step back and to feel that music in the first few beats. And so how did you look at each of the individual scenes and determine how you wanted to introduce the music and whether it needed to come straight in or if you needed to grow a little bit?
It's a lot of trial and error with that kind of thing. You know, you have to watch the scene and try it out. And you know, the way music works often in a very unexpected way with film. A really easy way to explain it is sometimes you could take a piece of music that's very well known and has very strong associations with something, and you could take a very stereotypical scene from a film, but when you combine those two things, suddenly the stereotypical scene from the film has new depths and the song means something completely different. And so I'm just a big fan of just try it out and see what happens and then get a feel for what works or doesn't.
I think the thing I loved about this film in particular was that the music is very tender through the film. You know, it's quite there's a safety in the sound of the music. And the characters you're watching the characters go through extremely challenging relationship issues. And nature is this kind of sanctuary that the characters will go out to. And that's the thing that's constant, is that the land is there, the sky is there, the stars are there, the plants and trees are there. And, you know, in their various different storylines, they go out and interact with nature. And I think in some ways it's quite a nice mirror with the music, that it will slowly come in and out, but it's always kind of there. You know, it's a continuous, quite sort of loving presence in the movie.
It really is. And one of the pieces I wanted to ask about is the piece that we hear when you have the central character and he's just laying there in the wilderness and we're seeing everything that he's seeing up in the sky. And I thought that was a really kind of poetic moment musically in the film as well, because that really, like you said, encapsulates everything that this character is going through internally. And so what was the journey of that specific track and that specific moment within the film for you both?
Well, there's this wonderful phrase in Japanese called wabi sabi, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but I thought it meant beauty and imperfection. And then I was speaking to a Japanese friend, and she actually said it means beautiful sadness. It means finding the you know, really that gorgeousness in the difficulty and in the sadness. And I think that's what it is. It's music that completely acknowledges difficulty and sadness and melancholy, but really underneath it there is a joy, even with that sadness as part of the feeling. There's an underlying hope to it. And I think that acoustic instruments are always going to do a great job at translating the intimacy of that feeling, I think.
Yeah. And I always think it's so interesting in terms of musically what you decide to come up with when there's a song in the credit sequence, because that's really about encapsulating the entire journey that the characters and the audience have been on throughout the entire film, and thinking about the mood and the tone that you want to leave them with, because that's their last kind of experience of the film. And so how did you determine what that really needed to be for the credit sequence for this movie?
It's just the most fun. Credit songs are the most fun because you know where you're at, you know where you've got to, you know what the message has been, you know what experience people have had. I mean, everyone will have their own individual interpretation of a film, but you're getting to a place where, you know, you hope that you've delivered the message of the film. And I love being given I don't know about you, Ilan, but I really love being given the sort of fence that you're inside, the puzzle pieces that you've got to use with, and then really digging deep rather than sort of, you know, going to anywhere you want. You've got this kind of fence that you're inside, and you've got your parameters, and then you just dig deep and really try and make something very meaningful, very soulful, and just really kind of enlarge that feeling that the filmmakers wanted people to leave the cinema feeling.
And Ilan, you've worked on such an incredible myriad of types of projects, from writing music for space exploration to ballet, fashion shows, but then also within film and television. And particularly when you're working within a television structure and you've got multiple episodes that you're approaching, whether it's a documentary series like David Attenborough or whether it's a narrative series, what does that look like for you in terms of thinking of what's the linear connection going to be throughout all of these episodes and all of these sounds? But again, just really distilling it down to all the individual moments to build onto that.
I mean, each project brings its own challenges. The David Attenborough project is, it's like running a marathon, because you're basically writing 10 short films per episode. There's a different, you're writing your character is an ant and they've got a challenge, and then the next one is your character's a rhinoceros and they've got a challenge. So you've got to come up with it. It's like writing lots of short films, and that's like running a marathon. That's a lot of work, as opposed to if you having a series where you've got 5 or 6 characters and they may have different themes that relate to them or their emotional context, and then you could keep coming back to them. That's certainly an easier job. For me, the hard thing is always writing the tune, capturing the emotion, whatever project I'm doing, whatever it is I'm creating. Writing the melody is the difficult bit, and once you've got that, the rest of it is more about craft. It's stuff that you can learn or you can get advice on, but nobody can help you write a tune.
And then, Katie, you made a real kind of conscious journey into working within film composition and writing for movies. And have you found that there's a real freedom to the experimentation that you're able to take within that, because people don't come in with a preconceived notion of what that sound might be? And how has that really evolved you as an artist for your own music that you're writing and putting out?
Yes, I mean, I think that because I'm a known name, there's probably a bias towards people coming to me to do projects, to do what I do, which is essentially kind of acoustic based songwriting. And that's why it was so fun working with Ilan, because I mean, melody is just my thing. That's my forerunner. What I do is write the melodies. And so it was so brilliant to watch him take that and just do these amazing themes and variations and all this great arrangement around it. And then I was in turn, totally inspired by things that he was writing. But I think what it's really brought to my own music making process is that I realized how much I would lean on lyrical content to explain emotion. And I would often find that I was writing songs that were, I quite like it when I sometimes just write really kind of bitchy breakup songs, but they're really happy. And it's quite nice, that juxtaposition. But I think I had not really realized how emotional you can be instrumentally, which kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but it really, I think I went and made a record in Tucson, Arizona, and I suddenly understood that you could immediately place someone somewhere in a location, in an environment, in a mood within the first 4 bars, 8 bars of a song. And I'd never really gone very deep into that before. And instrumentation, using things like euphoniums rather than trumpets, or clarinets rather than, whatever. They really have emotional association with them for people. And it's very interesting playing with that. And it's just another, myriad of layers to writing a pop song. Those choices of instrumentation and tempo and intro and setting. Really, it's all about, a lot of learning about setting has been really interesting.
And within that journey of experimentation within this film, were there any particular tracks or scenes that really the two of you just ended up spending a lot more time in finessing and really trying to figure out what it needed from you musically?
It's hard to remember. It was quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember. It's been a fairly long journey, this film. I think what was it? Did we struggle a bit with the scene where the boys come out of they break it? They in the middle of the night they climb out of the window.
Yeah.
I can't
I remember there was quite a lot of to and fro about the Spanish song.
Yeah, that's true.
When
and that's one of my favorites.
Because it was also, I don't speak Spanish. So I was sort of a little bit hesitant, just going, am I actually going to be able to pull this off? And should we get someone Spanish to sing it? And is it really, are we being too on the nose having a Spanish song in the movie? And I think that we made a really great decision by pushing ourselves, and me pushing myself, to actually sing in Spanish. And I sat with a Spanish tutor for a couple of hours who basically phonetically took me through how to sing this song properly. And so that there was a real sense of achievement with that, because that wasn't really kind of, when we talked about doing this project, it wasn't like, oh, by the way, you're going to have to sing a song in Spanish. So that was a real achievement for me to do that, and it ended up working really, really well. And I think because I'm singing it is the same voice that you hear on the other songs, so it does sort of bring a more contemporary feel to what is basically a pretty traditional sounding song.
Yeah. And you obviously both come to this project with such a wealth of experience, but did you find that stepping out on the other side of it, that there were things that you had the opportunity to learn about yourself as an artist from working on it?
I think you always learn things about yourself when you work on projects, and if you sort of put your heart and soul into it. But yeah, for me, I really like collaborating with songwriters because that's something that I don't do very much of, and so I get to learn a lot from that. And with Katie, it was just a really happy and really easy collaboration, and that it's, one shouldn't take that for granted. It's not always like that.
Yeah, most of us are a nightmare. I'm just the anomaly. But no, I think for me too, it was the challenge was actually to bring my recognizable musical palette to a project. My acoustic guitar, acoustic drums, bass. I think we used accordion and some mandolin and some really nice kind of folk instruments.
And that ukulele bass.
Yeah, there was a ukulele bass.
I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Rubber string.
See, that's what I learned. I learned there was such a thing as a ukulele bass.
It sounds amazing. Sounds huge. But I found that I was able to be inspired by the project and bring a collection of songs to it that was different from my usual sound. I think that as a collection, these songs sound very much signature to this film, and that they are their own little world sonically that sure are related to what I do, but definitely sound different from my normal songwriting, which I think is lovely that they exist for this film only.
Yeah. Well, I really loved the experience of getting to see what you both created, not just in terms of the sound that it creates within the film, but tonally and emotionally, the way that you've achieved that as well. So thank you so much for sharing all of the behind the scenes of how that came together. Thank you so much to both of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.